The story opens with a young woman whose elegance conceals a deeper mystery. She appears to be a maid, gifted as a companion to a hero named Arthur Louis Zetes, the future heir to one of the country's most powerful corporations. Yet, through a twist of fate, she now finds herself in Arthur's household. Arthur observes her with quiet curiosity. Though she looks perfectly human, he doubts that anyone could have created something so lifelike. The craftsmanship behind her form alone makes him acknowledge why the Zetes Corporation dominates the entire nation's technology industry. Still, a sliver of doubt lingers in his mind, and he decides to watch her carefully. It doesn't take long for his suspicions to prove justified. Within moments of observing her, something unexpected happens. Arthur intervenes immediately, restoring order and assigning her to investigate the incident, suspecting that her appearance there had been planned to test his reactions. His sharp instincts serve him well. He quickly deduces that someone is monitoring him from the rooftop and orders his assistant to remove a hidden microphone beneath the table. Years of betrayal have taught him caution. Arthur's life has been shaped by deceit and survival. His own relatives have attempted to poison, kidnap, and get rid of him. It is no wonder that he has grown to despise human nature. That same evening, he receives a package containing a bouquet of flowers. His assistant admires their beauty, but hidden within is a knife. The delivery, intended as a message, reminds Arthur of the truth he has always known. People exist only for greed and impurity. To him, humans are selfish, driven by desire and deception. Objects, on the other hand, never betray. A robot incapable of lying or corruption is the only form of loyalty he trusts. Yet, as he studies the maid again, something disturbs him. She appears to be sweating, an act no machine should be capable of. Meanwhile, Marie Advance, the supposed robot, reveals impressive combat abilities, moving with the precision and strength of a martial artist. However, her stoic face betrays something unusual. She is sweating not from mechanical malfunction, but from fear. The truth is that Marie is human. To save her parents from crushing debt, she accepted a contract to serve the Zetes family, pretending to be an artificial being. Now trapped in her disguise, she must act perfectly mechanical or risk exposure. Arthur, however, fails to notice her humanity. He studies her with interest, admiring her poise and cold demeanor. When she announces she will clean the room, her mechanical tone brings him a strange sense of calm. He begins to address her more personally, sensing an odd contrast between his own intensity and her emotionless composure. While his assistant serves tea, he explains Murray's new role. Arthur faces constant assassination attempts, and the maid will act as his personal bodyguard. As the assistant speaks, Murray quietly prepares food. She remarks that she is only allowed to eat when her master is in the bath, a rule she accepts with robotic discipline. When she steals a sandwich and runs off, the assistant panics, realizing that if her true nature is discovered, they will both be punished. Later, when the driver arrives late, Arthur reprimands him severely. He detests lateness as much as deceit, believing that unreliability is a sign of weakness. In the car, he mentions an upcoming university lecture followed by a formal dinner with an associate's son, a rude and reckless man. Arthur instructs her to act human during the event. At the university, Marie witnesses Arthur's brilliance firsthand. He is an exemplary student, admired by peers and respected by professors. But not everyone is kind. A group of boys accidentally bump into her in the corridor, muttering apologies. Mary responds mechanically, exposing her robotic disguise. Their mocking tone makes it clear they see her as nothing more than a tool. Arthur arrives in time, defending her with quiet authority. The boys retreat, and Arthur remarks to himself that her emotionless face is oddly charming. When they return to the mansion, Arthur's half-brother Maillard greets them. His demeanor is polite, but his eyes are filled with malice. The tension between them is palpable. Both exchange hollow compliments and disguised insults, concealing years of resentment beneath polite smiles. Mary, naive and trusting, initially believes Maillard to be kind. Later, when Maillard excuses himself to find the bathroom, Mary offers to guide him, startling him with her sudden movement. Nervous, he insists she stop. She apologizes mechanically. When he examines her, fascinated yet uneasy, he wonders about the purpose of a maid who cannot even smile. In response, she attempts one, a twisted, unnatural imitation that sends chills down his spine. The grotesque expression leaves him visibly shaken, and he hurriedly leaves the room. That night, Arthur stands by his window, watching the dark city beyond. Memories of his childhood flood back, the warmth of his father's hand, the hatred in his brother's eyes. His solitude feels heavier than ever. Murray approaches him quietly, interrupting his thoughts. She regrets doing so when she sees the pain on his face. Arthur asks her for a favor, lying down and resting his head on her lap. Her body feels firm beneath him, and he assumes it must be the metallic frame of her design. In truth, it is the strength of her human body. For the first time in years, Arthur feels peace. He confides that he has never had anyone by his side. The weight of being chosen as heir has left him alone, burdened with responsibility he never asked for. Mary promises to stay by his side always. Deep inside, she realizes that beneath his cynicism lies a boy who only seeks warmth and trust. Yet she senses something hidden. She can tell that he, too, is lying about his indifference. The next morning, two identical cars appear at the mansion. One arrives early. Moments later, the real one shows up. The kidnapper reveals himself to be none other than Maid. He sneers at Arthur's helplessness, mocking the robot maid who dared to defy him. His taunts are cruel, dripping with years of resentment. Arthur, bound and powerless, realizes too late that his brother has been plotting his downfall from the start. Mary's absence haunts him. He cannot believe she could have survived the attack. Rage and despair twist inside him as Maid gloats, speaking of erasing the family name entirely. Arthur remains defiant not from pride, but from grief. But his defiance earns him more cruelty. Maid accuses him of despicable acts, mocking his parentage and character. Arthur silently accepts that the world would be better off without him. Still, one thought lingers: gratitude. Meeting Mary, even for a short while, had given him a reason to care again. Then, against all expectation, a familiar voice cuts through the chaos. Mary bursts into the scene, alive and determined. Her combat skills prove real as she leaps into battle, dismantling the attackers one by one. Within moments, she frees Arthur, guiding him through the warehouse. But danger lingers. The place is filled with gasoline. And one of the men carelessly lights a cigarette. Flames erupt instantly, spreading through the structure. Smoke fills the air. The stairs collapse. Arthur begins to lose consciousness. Desperate, Marie searches for an exit and spots a small basement window. She hoists Arthur onto her shoulders, determined to carry him to safety. But when he realizes her plan, he refuses to abandon her. He insists she isn't made of indestructible metal, that she will die if she stays. Marie, knowing the truth, decides to reveal it. For the first time, she speaks from her heart. Serving him had become more than duty. She had come to treasure his presence. Beneath her emotionless exterior, she had discovered something human, something real. Arthur listens, torn between disbelief and pain. He recognizes her courage and tells her that she deserves more than a life of danger and deception. He believes she can simply reboot if she survives, but deep down he knows it isn't true. She pushes him through the window, urging him to live. Flames consume the room behind her. When the world fades back into color, Marie awakens in a hospital bed. Burned but alive, she sees Arthur sitting beside her. Relief floods his face as he explains that he contacted Roy, his assistant, to help her after the fire. Something about her haunts him, the memory of her warmth, her trembling hands, and what he swears was a smile in the flames. Roy and Mary notice his silence, wondering if he has realized the truth. Arthur finally decides to keep his thoughts buried. He convinces himself that perhaps he only imagined her humanity. For now, he insists that she remain a robot because that is what the world expects her to be, what he expects himself to believe. Loving a machine would be madness, and loving a person would be weakness. Mary accepts her role once more, pretending to be what he wants her to be, not because she must, but because it is the only way to stay by his side. And so their story ends, a broken boy and the woman who pretends to be a machine. Bound by the fragile illusion of loyalty and the unspoken truth of love, neither dares to admit. The next morning, the courtyard of the Zetes mansion was alive with preparation for an important event. Arthur oversaw everything with sharp precision, his gaze scanning every corner. When he noticed that some chairs were missing, he immediately confronted a maid, accusing her of negligence. The terrified woman tried to explain that she had followed instructions, but Arthur, losing his patience, dismissed her on the spot. He refused to tolerate even the smallest mistake. Afterward, his attention turned to Maria, whom he silently praised for her flawless efficiency. To him, she represented the pride of Zetes Corporation, a perfect, tireless machine. Soon, elegant guests from high society began to arrive. As Maria observed them, she couldn't help but feel that this world of wealth and refinement was far removed from her own experience. Arthur greeted the guests confidently, explaining that his father, away on business, had entrusted him with full responsibility for the party. As the family's heir, he could not allow any imperfection to tarnish their name. Quietly, he instructed Maria to stay alert for suspicious behavior and, in a lower voice, gave her an unusual order to ensure that no green bell peppers were served, since he despised them. Maria nodded silently, committing herself to the task. Moments later, Arthur's uncle and aunt Carl and Charlotte arrived, greeting him warmly. Maria was surprised, having assumed he was estranged from his family. Roy, standing nearby, explained that these two were among the few relatives who still supported him. Arthur's mood lightened as he thanked them for coming. Charlotte noticed that her nephew seemed unusually cheerful, as if something good had recently happened. Proudly, Arthur introduced Maria as the greatest success of Zetes Corporation. Charlotte approached, fascinated by the maid's human-like presence, almost doubting that she was truly mechanical. Inside, Maria worried about being discovered, but Roy diverted attention by asking her to carry more dishes. While serving, a cat darted across the courtyard, nearly spilling wine everywhere. With remarkable reflexes, Maria caught the animal and stabilized the glasses without spilling a drop. The guests were stunned, and Carl remarked that no human could have such precision. Roy quickly added that Maria was equipped with seismic isolation, highlighting her superiority as a machine. As Maria continued her duties, she noticed another maid carrying a dish decorated with green bell peppers. Remembering Arthur's request, she discreetly removed it before anyone noticed, ensuring that the ingredient would not reach his table. A sudden noise from outside drew her attention. Detecting an intruder, she reacted instantly, disabling him with a swift kick. Realizing there could be more, she carefully entered the mansion, checking each room and moving upstairs. When she sensed movement behind her, she turned and grabbed the figure, only to find Arthur. Later in the office, Arthur rested his head on her lap, exhausted from hosting. For the first time, Maria saw him vulnerable, human in a way she hadn't expected. When he leaned closer, a strange sensation stirred within her. Her heart began to race uncontrollably. Startled, she froze, and Arthur quickly stood up, composing himself before leaving to rejoin the guests. Outside, Charlotte observed quietly, stroking the cat. Something about Maria felt off, too natural, too alive. She couldn't shake the sense that the maid was not what she seemed. Back at the party, Maria tried to calm the strange rhythm of her heart. Roy called her over to serve water, but distracted, she picked up a pitcher without realizing there were no cups and accidentally poured it over him. Mortified, she apologized, but Roy quietly told her to step aside. Ashamed, Maria scolded herself, fearing she had embarrassed Arthur. Moments later, faint whispers from the bushes caught her attention. She approached carefully and overheard someone mentioning a bomb meant for Arthur. Acting swiftly, she destroyed the detonator before it could be activated. In the process, she threw the attacker into the middle of the party, causing chaos among the guests, who screamed in fear, believing the robotic maid had malfunctioned. Maria panicked, convinced she had ruined everything. But Arthur stepped forward and calmed the crowd, explaining that she had just saved them from an assassination attempt. The guests' fear turned to admiration, and soon applause filled the courtyard. Carl remarked that Arthur clearly trusted her deeply, while Charlie observed that perhaps Maria's presence was helping him rediscover his faith in people. High above on the mansion's rooftop, Maynard watched the scene with rage, vowing revenge for his failed plan. That night, Arthur found Maria in the garden, now wearing the elegant dress he had ordered for her. Enchanted, he admired her appearance and took her hand, suggesting they spend a quiet moment together after the guests had gone. Maria, still troubled by her earlier mistake, apologized for causing trouble, but Arthur thanked her for everything, especially for ensuring that no green bell peppers appeared in the dishes. She found him kind and thoughtful, wishing she could serve him forever. When he asked about her energy source, she replied that she used batteries. Arthur appeared surprised but said nothing, hiding his growing doubt. He leaned forward and kissed her forehead gently. Startled, Maria stepped back and ran into the greenhouse, her mind spinning. She couldn't tell whether he had realized she was human. The next morning, Maria nervously prepared to face him again, uncertain whether the darkness of the previous night had concealed her reaction. Entering the living room with breakfast, she found Arthur greeting her casually. Confused, she wondered if he remembered the kiss. He noticed her unease but said nothing. Roy, watching from afar, feared Arthur's suspicion might be deepening. Just as Arthur seemed ready to speak, a bee flew between them. As he tried to swat it away, they came too close and Maria instinctively recoiled. Arthur, slightly flustered, ended the moment and left for the office with his meal. There he observed Maria closely, as though trying to read a secret written behind her calm exterior. Later, as she cleaned the windows, he approached and took her hand, offering help. Sensing that he was testing her, Maria deliberately moved with stiff, mechanical motions and emitted faint metallic sounds to reinforce her artificial image. She continued her act down the corridor, unaware that she was being silently watched. Not long after, Roy summoned her to the kitchen with a somber expression. He explained that Arthur had decided to let her go, suspecting something was wrong. Roy promised to continue supporting her, but insisted it would be safer for her to leave before the truth came out. Heartbroken, Maria pleaded to stay, promising not to be discovered, but Roy remained firm. Revealing her identity, he said, would only bring Arthur pain. Then he introduced her replacement, a new robotic maid identical in appearance but superior in function. In the office, Roy presented her to Arthur as Maria I, the latest model, and demonstrated her precision as she caught a fly midair. Arthur said nothing, simply nodding as if accepting the change. In her room, Maria packed her belongings in silence. She longed to stay but knew it was impossible. Roy accompanied her to the exit where a car waited. She tried to return her uniform but hesitated, saying it held too many memories. Roy thanked her sincerely for her dedication. Just as she was about to leave, Arthur appeared at the entrance, blocking her path. He looked at her intently, revealing that he had grown suspicious ever since Roy presented the new maid, officially named Maria Roman II. He demanded to know if she was hiding something. Struggling to remain calm, Maria told him that her presence was unnecessary now that he had a perfect replacement. Arthur admitted that the new model was more efficient but confessed that something essential was missing. Before he could continue, Maria Roman II identified the original as a threat and activated combat mode. In an instant, her hands transformed into blades and she lunged forward. Maria reacted instinctively, blocking each strike, but her opponent's strength was overwhelming. The floor trembled with every impact as the fight grew desperate. When a fatal blow was about to land, Arthur stepped in, shielding her and taking the hit himself. The sight of him injured ignited something deep within Maria. Fueled by fear and anger, she gathered all her strength and delivered a devastating kick that shattered Maria Roman II completely. Silence followed as she stood among the wreckage, realizing that no machine could ever truly replace her. Arthur, bleeding but conscious, confessed that he had known something was wrong all along. He believed her odd behavior was due to a defect, and that Roy had created the new version to cover it up. Determined to help, he promised to invest whatever it took to repair her. Relieved, Maria pretended to be fixed, resuming her calm, obedient demeanor. Without warning, Arthur embraced her, saying he wanted her to stay by his side forever. Deep down, Maria wished for the same. She understood now that the bond between them had grown beyond any divide between human and machine. The next morning, Roy greeted her with a discreet smile, expressing how pleased he was to work with her again. Arthur appeared happier than he had in years, carrying a quiet sense of peace. Yet the calm did not last. To everyone's surprise, Maria Roman II, believed destroyed, reappeared, restored, and upgraded. Roy explained that he had managed to recover part of her system, and that from then on, both Marias would protect Arthur together. Maria had accepted the decision without protest. She resolved to keep her secret hidden and remain beside the man who, without knowing it, had already captured her heart. The next morning, at the gates of the Zetes mansion, two workers whispered cautiously to one another about Arthur. They claimed that he was immune to poison, that not even 10 doses of the most lethal substance could harm him. While they plotted something suspicious, Mary suddenly appeared. Before they could escape, she swiftly captured them in a net with almost frightening precision. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Maynard raged inside his mansion. His plan involving the workers had failed, and he cursed the lack of competent assassins. The fury on his face made it clear that he would not give up so easily on eliminating Arthur. In Arthur's office, he rested with his head on Mary's lap, visibly weary. He complained about human foolishness, remarking that robots were far more reliable, and that, in truth, she was the only one he needed. At one point, he handed Mary a battery as if it were a thoughtful gift. Confused but unable to refuse, she accepted it. In her flustered attempt to keep up the act of being a robot, she even pretended to recharge by placing the battery in her mouth, which Arthur found strangely endearing. Roy, who happened to witness the scene, found it ridiculous, but Arthur was too amused to care. Moments later, Roy entered the office again. Arthur, changing the subject, questioned whether the mansion's security was failing since problems kept arising. Roy explained that employees did not last long, while Mary pointed out that it was mostly because Arthur dismissed them too easily. She noticed that he looked exhausted, and Roy suggested that he should take a break, reminding him that even his father had done so. Arthur, with his usual charm, teased Marie about joining him in this supposed break, though she denied being in any girlfriend mode. Her nervousness betrayed her. Later, the two were seen walking together through the city in what resembled an impromptu date. Mary, determined to maintain her disguise, tried to act affectionate but quickly became embarrassed by her own awkwardness. Arthur insisted that during their outing, she should not address him formally nor call him sir, which surprised her. Watching a nearby couple, she decided to imitate them, ordering tea and offering some to Arthur. In return, he humorously offered her a battery to eat, astonishing the onlookers who recognized the Zetes Corporation's logo on it and marveled at Arthur's eccentricity. Later, at a park, Marie continued observing the same couple and noticed the growing affection between them. Arthur spotted some boats and suggested going for a ride, but Mary quickly reminded him that robots should avoid water. Remembering that Roy might scold him if anything happened, Arthur decided against it. Wanting to do something thoughtful, Mary picked a 4-leaf clover and offered it to him as a gift. Though she felt foolish for presenting something so simple to a wealthy man, Arthur was touched, saying that the most valuable gifts were those given from the heart. As dusk approached, Arthur gently asked to hold her hand and she allowed it. A passerby commented on the number of couples that day, but Mary knew their situation was different. Their affection was merely an act, or at least that was what she tried to believe. Deep inside, she realized that one day Arthur would find someone real, and the thought made her chest tighten. Later, in front of a church, Arthur became nostalgic, recalling visits with his parents. Overcome by emotion, he asked permission to kiss Mary. She hesitated, conflicted by her programmed girlfriend mode. As he leaned closer, a dagger suddenly fell from above. Mary reacted instantly. pushing him out of harm's way before leaping onto the roof to confront the attacker. At the top, she encountered a boy in blue who complimented her and mockingly asked if she was Arthur's girlfriend. She clarified that she was merely his assistant, but he teased that they seemed quite close. Taking advantage of her distraction, he pushed her toward the edge, declaring that he had already stolen her heart before vanishing into the night. Mary nearly fell, but Arthur caught her just in time. Embarrassed, she apologized for letting the attacker escape and for ruining his day off. Arthur, however, simply kissed her cheek and reassured her. The next day at the university, Mary found herself thinking about the boy in blue and vowed to find him again. Her thoughts were interrupted when the professor introduced a new transfer student, Noah. To her shock, he was the same attacker from the roof. She quickly learned that Noah had been hired by the mayor himself. During the break, Noah was quickly surrounded by curious classmates who praised his achievements, impressed that he had passed the difficult entrance exams. Some even proposed a welcome party. Mary rushed through the corridors to warn Arthur, but Noah intercepted her. He taunted her calm demeanor, saying it intimidated others but amused him. He handed her a newspaper featuring his past boxing matches, records Roy was supposed to have erased. Mary was horrified, realizing how dangerous he truly was. Arthur arrived moments later, demanding to know Noah's intentions. Noah provocatively hinted that Marie preferred his company, irritating Arthur further. When Arthur asked Marie for her opinion, she deflected, sending an encrypted message asking for help. Arthur, stunned by her response, grew visibly tense. Noah proposed a challenge. If he won, Mary would be his. If Arthur won, Noah would leave them alone. Before the situation escalated, a group of chickens escaped from the Animal Research Club, creating chaos across the courtyard. A student named Toby called for help catching the birds, and Noah, grinning mischievously, turned it into a competition. Whoever caught the most chickens would win. Arthur immediately accepted. There were 7 chickens in total, and the hunt began. Arthur moved swiftly, catching one chicken with remarkable agility while nearby students cheered. By the time he caught 3, whispers spread about his skill. Mary wanted to assist him, but he insisted on handling everything alone. Meanwhile, Noah tried convincing other students to help him, claiming there were no rules against it. He struggled as the chickens kept fleeing from him, which secretly amused Marie. Eventually, he managed to tie up 3 chickens, evening the score. Only 1 chicken remained. Arthur and Noah stood opposite each other, tense and focused. Both lunged, but the bird evaded them. Mary, desperate for Arthur not to lose, climbed a tree to guide him, but the branch snapped, sending her into the lake below. Without hesitation, Arthur dove in and rescued her. On the grass afterward, Marie pretended to faint, and Arthur whispered that he needed her. Though she barely moved, his words touched her deeply. She soon opened her eyes, insisting she was fine, and subtly reminded him of the duel. Moments later, Noah appeared holding the last chicken. Declaring the contest over, he praised Arthur for abandoning the chase to save Mary and suggested calling it a draw, remarking that such devotion was admirable. He then left, leaving Mary relieved yet uneasy. Later that evening at the mansion, Roy explained to Mary that he had convinced Arthur he hadn't been in the water long enough to fall ill. Still, she carried a lingering guilt over the day's events. Not long after, it was revealed that Arthur had indeed caught a cold from his rescue in the lake, a quiet but undeniable reminder of the sacrifice he had made for her. A few minutes later, the tension reached its breaking point. Roy stood before Mary, pressing a knife to her throat, his eyes blazing with anger. He scolded her harshly for allowing Arthur to fall sick, calling it nearly unforgivable. Calmly, Mary accepted his words, saying her only regret would be if Arthur ever discovered the truth about her. Caught off guard by her sincerity, Roy lowered the knife, revealing it was only a toy. He explained that no one could possibly learn the truth as he had erased all traces of her past. Without addressing his reassurance, Mary stated that what truly mattered was Arthur's recovery, vowing to do whatever it took to restore his health. Roy's tone softened. Leading her to another room, he revealed a mysterious suitcase, explaining that Arthur's father once claimed it contained a device capable of curing anything, though even he had never known what it really was. Mary gazed at the case, uneasy yet intrigued by the unknown object inside. Sometime later, Mary entered Arthur's office to find him working despite his fever. Concerned, she urged him to rest, but he refused. His deep sense of responsibility drove him to continue preparing for the upcoming school anniversary as both student council host and the heir of the Zetes Corporation. Not wanting to disappoint those who believed in him, he pressed on. Watching him, Mary admired his resolve as he left the room to retrieve more documents. Back in her quarters, she opened the suitcase and stared at its contents, uncertain whether something so strange could truly be of use. That night, Mary entered Arthur's room dressed as a nurse, leaving him completely stunned. Gently, she pushed him onto the bed and insisted he rest. Pressing her forehead to his, she checked his temperature with care. Arthur grew flustered, but Mary remained composed, saying her method was purely practical. Seeing how feverish and drenched in sweat he was, she offered to help him change. When he removed his shirt, she struggled to stay calm, reminding herself she was a machine. But upon seeing the scars that covered his back, her composure faltered. Arthur explained that those marks were remnants of the dangers he had faced since childhood, scars that would never fade. Overcome with emotion, Murray wrapped her arms around him, silently promising never to let anyone hurt him again. For the first time, Arthur allowed himself to appear vulnerable. Though he couldn't fully understand his feelings, the warmth of her presence eased something deep within him. Meanwhile, in the mansion's corridors, two servants gossiped about Arthur's worsening condition, joking that he might not survive. When Murray appeared behind them and heard their mocking remarks about her outfit, she acted without hesitation, kicking one and knocking out the other with a vase. Seeing another servant heading upstairs toward Arthur's room, she toppled the entire staircase onto him. Once the commotion ended, Mary returned to Arthur's room. She apologized for the noise, assuring him that he could now rest peacefully. Arthur took her hand, his gaze gentle and sincere. He thanked her, admitting that he often pretended to be fine even when he wasn't, but with her he could be honest. The trust in his voice weighed heavily on Mary's conscience, yet it only deepened her wish to stay by his side. At the Maynard mansion, the atmosphere turned grim. In a dimly lit basement, Maynard descended the stairs in search of Noah, visibly uneasy. Upon finding him, he complained about Noah's habit of appearing unannounced. Noah handed him Arthur's phone, saying the incriminating video had been erased and that Arthur could now be killed without hesitation. But Maynard corrected him. He wanted Arthur alive so he could end him personally. The venom in his tone revealed the depth of his hatred. Days later, Arthur's mansion hosted a lavish masquerade ball to celebrate his birthday. The grand halls shimmered with light and laughter. Relieved to see Arthur healthy again, Mary smiled as he playfully offered her a handful of batteries so she could enjoy the party too. The gesture touched her deeply. The cheerful mood shifted when Noah appeared in costume, greeting them with exaggerated enthusiasm. Arthur tensed immediately. Before the tension could rise, an elderly politician approached and called for Arthur's attention. Arthur greeted him respectfully and left to discuss official matters, leaving Murray behind. Noah claimed he was going to get food, but Murray grew suspicious and followed him. She soon came across a guest wearing the same costume Noah had been in, carrying a food tray. The guest said he wasn't Noah, he had merely borrowed the outfit, and pointed out that several children wore identical ones. Realizing she'd been tricked, Murray contacted Roy through her communicator, asking for Arthur's location. Roy responded that Arthur's signal was coming from a room at the end of a connecting hallway and promised to guide her there. Meanwhile, Arthur was walking with the politician through a quiet corridor, unaware of the danger ahead. Suddenly, Noah appeared and injected him with something. As dizziness overtook him, the terrified politician fled, apologizing and claiming he was only acting for his family's safety. Noah remarked coldly that threatening loved ones always worked, though he never truly understood why. Despite the drug's effects, Arthur fought back, striking Noah with a taser. Noah commended his resilience before retaliating with a kick, disarming him and injecting another dose. He said no one could survive that much and revealed the compound had originally been meant for Mary. Arthur was merely bait. Following Roy's directions, Mary sprinted down the halls. As she tried to open the connecting door, Noah appeared suddenly, pressing a knife to her throat and pinning her against the wall. His voice was calm but deranged as he praised her composure, calling her the most fascinating being he had ever met. Mary fought back. Her first strike missed, but the second landed, forcing him to drop the knife. She declared that she was ready for the battle she had long prepared for. Excited, Noah smirked and prepared to fight seriously, suggesting they team up as assassins. Mary's eyes turned cold as she refused, declaring her loyalty to Arthur through her actions, not words. Enraged, Noah threw her to the ground and gripped her neck, claiming he understood her better than Arthur ever could, that she'd be happier by his side. Even as her strength faded, Mary's eyes burned with defiance. Spotting his weakening right arm, she pulled a small device from her pocket and hurled it, plunging the room into total darkness. Noah laughed, confident in his ability to fight blind. But when he cracked his whip, he realized too late he'd struck the wrong target. His opponent was not Mary, but a duplicate android, sending him staggering. Mary watched briefly, impressed by her duplicate's skill, before telling Murray too to finish the job. She ran into the adjoining room and found Arthur unconscious but alive. Relief flooded her as she held him close. Suddenly, Noah reappeared, grabbing her from behind. His expression was twisted with obsession as he confessed that he loved Arthur, not the man, but the machine he believed Mary to be. His words cut deep as he taunted her, wondering how Arthur would react if he knew the truth and insisting no one had ever loved her. Before he could go on, Arthur, barely conscious, placed his hands over her ears, telling her not to listen. Though weak, his eyes burned with defiance as he demanded to know who dared harm her. Seeing him stand up for her, even in such a fragile state, ignited something powerful within Mary. Overcome with emotion, she lunged at Noah, striking him again and again until he fell unconscious. In that moment, her heart, mechanical though it was, screamed that she was more than a machine. She could feel, love, and fight for what truly mattered. Holding Arthur close, Mary whispered softly that he had always protected her, healed her, and awakened emotions she never thought she could feel. And now she understood the truth. She loved him. That realization filled her with courage and peace. A few days later, after classes at the university, Marie overheard students joking about Noah's absence. One said he must have caught a mental cold. She smiled faintly, knowing the beating she'd given him was reason enough for his disappearance. Yet as she left the building, she encountered him once again. Noah looked tired and defeated, admitting he was too weak to continue his old life. He reminded her that now that she knew his feelings, deceiving Arthur would only become harder. Mary, unshaken, coldly told him to worry about his own life. Just then, Arthur appeared and Noah instantly shifted to a lighthearted tone, pretending nothing was wrong. He claimed he had simply tripped during the party and had heard rumors about an attack on Arthur. Arthur, still confused, mentioned that he could have sworn he heard Mary's voice that night, but Noah brushed it off and walked away. When silence returned, Arthur smiled gently at Mary. He said that during his fever, he drank something beautiful and vivid, something he wished had been real. Mary looked at him quietly, her heart racing. Deep inside, she knew the truth. The emotions growing within her were not artificial. They were real, undeniable, and inescapable. She was in love with him. One day, Mary encountered an assassin demanding to know Arthur's whereabouts. Unaware that she was his bodyguard, the man didn't see it coming when she kicked him straight out the window. Later, Arthur praised her for handling yet another assassination attempt. He suspected someone among his staff was involved and pointed out a servant he caught snooping earlier. When the man began to panic, Arthur ordered him dragged out of the manor. Grateful that Mary, supposedly a robot, could never lie, Arthur complimented her and thanked her for her loyalty. But Marie harbored a secret. She was human. If Arthur ever discovered the truth, she'd lose her place beside him. The lie weighed heavily, especially since she'd fallen in love with him. Every time he smiled, her heart raced and she feared her emotions would expose her. Lost in thought, she turned too quickly and knocked over Arthur's prized vase. Roy expressed concern, but Arthur dismissed it, saying Mary was far more precious than any vase. Later, Marie overheard Roy telling Arthur that she had been making too many mistakes lately and would be sent to the factory for maintenance. To Mary, that was equivalent to death. She sat quietly, despairing, wishing only to stay by Arthur's side. Soon after, her upgraded counterpart Marie too noticed her behavior and concluded she was showing symptoms of love. When Mary overheard this, she was both startled and relieved to see Marie too fully recovered. Overcome with emotion, she hugged her tightly. Jokingly, Mary too vowed that if she ever met Noah again, she'd crush him flat like a hamburger. Then she proudly shared her new upgrades. She could now intervene when Mary was in danger and even assist with matters of love. Tears filled Mary's eyes as she confessed that Arthur made her heart ache in ways she couldn't explain. Later that day, the two visited Arthur. Mary wore sunglasses and Marie too explained she was in DJ mode, providing cheerful music. Arthur smiled as Mary used her turnables, while she silently thanked the glasses for shielding her from his radiant gaze. But Arthur gently removed them, saying he wanted to see her face at all times. Immediately, Mary too detected that Mary's vitals were spiking and feared she'd break down. Trying to distract him, she bumped into Mary. Thinking quickly, Mary too claimed that removing sunglasses during DJ mode caused instability. When Arthur teased about resting on her lap, Mary panicked and pretended to malfunction. Mary too covered again, blaming it on a glitch from earlier. Mary froze, realizing she was now acting as Arthur's lap pillow. Mary too told Arthur to avoid touching her until she was stable, though other requests were fine. Curious, Arthur asked if Mary could say, "I love you." Mary stood silent for so long that Mary too checked her systems. When Mary finally spoke, she blurted out nonsense. Mary too instantly declared she needed a reboot and dragged her away. Near the staircase, Mary admitted she wasn't fine, confessing her love had made her unstable. Mary too comforted her, explaining that while love made one weak, it could also give strength. Mary looked up, heartwarming at the realization that she found a true friend. Determined to make amends, Mary went to Arthur's study. To her surprise, Arthur apologized first, saying she'd been overworked since the party. He admitted he'd been feeling strange around her, though she was supposed to protect him. He often wanted to protect her instead. His words made her blush, and for a moment he thought she looked almost human. Before they could say more, the same assassin burst through the window. Arthur shielded Marie as the man mocked them, boasting that his earlier fall hadn't killed him. Drawing his gun, he vowed not to miss this time. Annoyed that he'd interrupted such a precious moment, Mary felt a surge of energy course through her body. She leaped forward, attacking with newfound strength. Mary too had been right, love could empower. She struck the assassin with a fierce kick, and as he stumbled, Arthur hurled a statue at him, calling her cute. Shocked, Mary smiled for the first time. Arthur froze, startled by her expression, before stepping back and letting the two handle the intruder. As he left, he wondered if he'd truly seen her smile, or if he was imagining it. He remembered the night of the party when, while unconscious, he could have sworn he heard her confess her love. Now, realizing he had fallen for her too, he collapsed onto his bed, disgusted yet fascinated, wondering how marriage with a robot could ever work. The next day, as Mary and Marie II tended the garden, Roy brought a message from Arthur but accidentally addressed Marie II instead. The slip cut deep and jealousy pricked Mary's chest. The following morning, she overheard Roy giving new instructions again to Marie II. Curious, she peeked into Arthur's study and found him warmly chatting with Marie II and Charlotte. When Charlotte noticed her and greeted her kindly, Mary returned the gesture politely but wasn't invited to join. Mary II had already taken over most of her duties. Later, when Mary offered Arthur tea, he ignored her and continued talking to Marie II about their private meeting the day before. Feeling unwanted, Mary spied on them from the balcony, catching fragments of their conversation involving Marie II and Roy. Suspicion grew. Was Arthur getting closer to Marie II? When Arthur later found Marie waiting, he asked for a shoulder massage, hoping to ease the tension, but Mary coldly said Marie II would do better. The next morning, before leaving for school, she muttered that he probably preferred Marie II's company, then silently scolded herself for sounding rude. At school, Marie watched girls fawn over Arthur and felt an ache in her chest. She soon spotted Noah surrounded by classmates discussing another party. Trying to avoid him, she turned away, but Noah appeared behind her and asked why she looked upset. Mary admitted she felt uneasy around Arthur and decided to keep an eye on Noah for safety reasons. Smirking, Noah pointed out that her emotions were jealousy, a symptom of love. He suggested the easiest way to deal with jealousy was to eliminate its source. Then, with a darker grin, he added that he too wanted Arthur gone so he and Marie could be together. But before he could finish, Marie had already vanished. That afternoon, Mary waited by the school gate until the driver approached, saying he was there to pick her up. When she replied that Arthur was still inside, he insisted Arthur had already gone to the park. Without a word, Mary sprinted off, her bag slipping from her hands. Watching her run, the driver picked it up and murmured that her behavior was unusually erratic for a robot. As she ran, Mary finally admitted that Noah was right. She was jealous. She feared losing Arthur to Marie II, but also felt guilty for doubting her. Loving him was painful. It revealed emotions she didn't want to face. At the park, Arthur sat quietly watching the sunset when an assassin appeared. Mary immediately intervened, declaring inwardly that she alone had the right to share this sunset with him. More assassins emerged, but Marie II burst from the bushes, firing small missiles that scattered them. She chased after the stragglers, leaving Mary to guard Arthur. Arthur smiled, explaining that the modifications he, Roy, and Charlotte had worked on allowed Mary II to operate independently whenever Mary needed repairs. Lowering her head, Marie apologized, admitting she'd been jealous and feared being replaced. Arthur froze, realizing she had just confessed her feelings outright. He reassured her that while Mary II was an exceptional robot, Marie would always be his favorite. Pulling her close, he told her that no matter how far technology advanced, she would remain his number one. As they sat beneath the fading sunset, Roy watched from a distance. The following morning, Arthur's driver arrived 10 minutes late. Mary immediately assumed the man was as good as dead this time, yet Arthur simply told her to get in the car, and they drove off without a trace of anger from him. During the ride, Marie wondered why he wasn't furious. Her confusion only grew when the driver casually wished Arthur a happy birthday. Mary was shocked she hadn't known something so important about the boy she liked. Arthur considered his birthday the worst day of the year. To him, it was nothing more than an excuse for enemies to send him rigged gifts filled with blades and bombs. His meals on this day were routinely poisoned, and his parties always ended up canceled due to bomb threats. It was also tied to memories he refused to speak of. The only fond birthday memory he had came from the year his father officially took him in as a stepchild, carving out a rare moment from his busy schedule to share a cake with him. Mary, remembering her own childhood before falling into extreme poverty, recalled how a birthday cake had always made her happy every year. She decided that once she returned to the mansion, she would bake a cake for Arthur. Birthdays in her mind were meant to be joyous occasions, and she wanted his to be one too. When they reached school, every girl in sight swarmed Arthur, begging him to accept their gifts. Mary quickly gathered them all as Arthur apologized to the crowd and made it clear he wouldn't be taking presents from classmates. He then asked Mary to help return everything, unintentionally placing her in a difficult position with the girls. They later invited her to join the Arthur fan club, formerly titled the Society for Wanting Arthur to Look at You Like You're Trash. Something was clearly wrong with these girls. Arthur was a misanthrope to his core, always responding to their greetings with a stray and polite smile. The girls, however, interpreted his distant attitude as him viewing them as nuisances, something they found thrilling to the point of nosebleeds. They handed Mary all their gifts again, expecting her to deliver them to Arthur. She made sure to check with him first. When she asked the girls if helping meant they would become her friends, the idea filled her with happiness since she genuinely liked Arthur as well. But everything fell apart when they immediately collected their gifts back and declared that falling in love with Arthur was a serious offense within their club. They believed he was far too wonderful for anyone to presume to love him, and they demanded that Mary give up. When she questioned what was so wrong about falling in love, the girls chased her through the school. Marie wondered whether her feelings for Arthur were really so unacceptable. Their pursuit stopped abruptly when the girls saw Arthur standing nearby holding a flustered Marie. His expression turned frightening as he warned them that someone would get hurt if they continued messing around. The girls apologized and left. Arthur then asked what had happened, and Mary simply assumed the role of someone who had been playing tag with them. Arthur later mentioned that student council business would keep him late and asked her to go home without him. Back at the mansion, Mary began preparing the cake, believing that adding a lot of tasty ingredients would guarantee a good result. While focused on her work, she suddenly swung her knife toward Noah, who had appeared without warning. He swiftly caught her hand and disarmed her, though Mary continued trying to strike at him. Noah explained that he had taken a break from hitman work and had no plans to harm Arthur. When she questioned why he was there, he hugged her warmly and claimed he was there for the cake. Mary refused to give him any and fought him off while continuing to mix the batter. Noah began offering baking advice, mentioning that baking was a convenient way to slip foreign substances into a target's body. Right then, the oven exploded. Mary retrieved the ruined cake and immediately suspected Noah, but he fled while stating that she was simply terrible at baking. He chose not to steal the cake because it looked too disgusting, and he wished her luck with her hopeless love. Outside, he marveled at how weak the mansion's security was and considered stopping by again to admire Marie in her maid outfit. As soon as he landed, however, Mary too detected him and nearly minced him into a hamburger steak. He reconsidered any future visits. Meanwhile, human Marie managed to repair her cake enough that once wrapped, it looked decent. Unfortunately, Mary too bumped into her, knocking it from her hands and ruining it again. Mary told the robot to forget it and focus on increasing patrols. As she stared at the destroyed cake, she realized she wouldn't be able to give it to Arthur. Remembering the fan club's comments and Noah's teasing, she wondered whether Arthur would even accept something she made. She felt he deserved better than her failed attempt. If she was going to embarrass herself, she figured it was better not to try at all. Arthur returned home at that moment, and Marie greeted him. He explained that his day had been exhausting because he spent it dodging presents from everyone. He wished he could accept people's goodwill at face value, but after everything he had experienced, trusting others was nearly impossible. The day had gone poorly for everyone, reaffirming why he hated his birthday so much. Marie didn't want him to feel that way, so she gave him the cake anyway. Arthur accepted it and admitted that he no longer felt doomed to be miserable every birthday because now he had Mary. She silently promised herself she would always be there for him. Arthur took a bite and struggled to hide his disgust, realizing she had mixed up the salt and sugar. Not wanting to hurt her feelings, he insisted it tasted good. He then mentioned something he had been wanting her to do for a while. That night, he asked her to change into a casual outfit while he dressed up as a butler. When they met again, they admired how lovely the other looked. Arthur styled her hair with unexpected skill and picked flowers for her. For dinner, he served her batteries, and later she lay on his lap while he gently stroked her hair. Mary felt deeply embarrassed. Arthur's gestures were so kind, yet she couldn't understand the conflict within her. A sudden knock interrupted them. A heap of presents had been delivered, despite Arthur's strict instructions to leave everything outside. As he approached the door, an assassin burst into the room with a knife. Marie prepared to intervene, but Arthur stunned the attacker with a taser he had upgraded after the previous incident, strong enough to incapacitate in one hit. When a second assassin arrived, Marie asked for a moment and rushed off to change back into her maid outfit. She returned and knocked the intruder out. In that moment, she understood why she felt torn. She didn't want to be protected. She wanted to be the one protecting him. She lifted Arthur into her arms, noting that he had likely fought off assassins long before she arrived, and she admired his resilience. It was precisely because he could stand on his own that she wanted to shield him. She wondered if her desire to protect him bothered him, but he absolutely adored it. The next day, Marie learned Arthur had collapsed at school and was asking for her. Rushing to him, she was suddenly captured by the Robot Lovers Club. They suspected she was a robot created by the Zetes Corporation and wanted to disassemble her. None of them had ever undressed a girl, and the thought weighed too heavily on their consciences to proceed. Mary claimed she had anti-gravity systems in her feet and could hover 3 millimeters above the ground, but needed to be untied to demonstrate. Once freed, she hopped lightly on one leg, prompting the boys to point out that it looked like normal jumping. She calmly stated that robots sometimes lied and knocked several of them aside and attempted to escape. Before she reached the door, the remaining boys dragged her down. Arthur soon arrived, having tracked her with a GPS device. One of the club members attempted a sneak attack from behind the door, but Arthur knocked him out with a single punch. He refused to let anyone have Mary but him. Mary wanted to protect him, and he had saved her once more. Suddenly, she realized something was wrong with her undergarments and panicked at the thought of him seeing her in such a state. When he tapped her shoulder, her heart raced and she quickly pretended to have lost her memory. Arthur brought her back to the mansion to consult Roy, who suggested keeping her overnight for maintenance. Arthur insisted on handling the matter himself. He explained that the two of them had 7 daily precepts of flirtation. Seeing how desperate he looked, Mary played along. The first was the morning hug, followed by holding hands on the way to and from school with their fingers interlaced. The third was feeding each other with the say ah gesture. The fourth was gazing into each other's eyes. The fifth was the lap pillow. The sixth was the head pat. And the seventh involved Arthur holding her face and asking her to close her eyes. Marie assumed this meant a kiss, but when she opened her eyes, nothing had happened. Arthur looked heartbroken, believing she truly didn't remember him. Mary then assured him she had regained her memories, claiming she located the girlfriend mode in her core programming after coming into contact with him. She added that she had restored all of her data regarding him. She reminded him they had never made any formal flirting agreement and scolded him for claiming to hate lies despite telling several that day. As they returned home together, both silently wished the flirting rules were real so they could walk back hand in hand.